Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another Geeksation Live Podcast. And this week we're going to be talking all things Resident Evil. I hope you guys can hear that, but we're going to be talking all things Resident Evil. So this week, of course, we have the normal guests. We've got Andrew Lebo.
Hey.
Dakota.
Oha.
Dakota Smith. What'd you say, Oha?
Oha. PC term. Get over it.
Okay, well, I'm not with all these hip PC terms. And Dustin Bond.
Guten Tag.
Guten Tag. So yeah, this it's interesting. Like this kind of topic came about after last week's show. We were just kind of shooting the wind after the show as we usually do. And I can't even remember, how did we get on the subject of Resident Evil? Do you guys remember?
I don't.
Oh man, good question.
I don't really remember, but we were just kind of talking. We usually after the show kind of talk for a little bit about random stuff. And somehow we got on the subject of Resident Evil, and like immediately I was like, dude, we got to do a Resident Evil podcast next week. So, and interestingly, it kind of timed out perfect because this, after we made that decision over the weekend, there was a lot of like Resident Evil news as far as like news broke that Constantine Film, which owns the rights to the Resident Evil franchise, at least, the film series, was going to be rebooting the film series. And I guess director James Wan is supposed to be attached as a producer. So I'm pretty excited about that.
James Wan.
Yeah, James Wan. So of course, James Wan is a director producer. He's, famous for like Saw, what else? A bunch of horror films. Deadly Silence, or whatever that movie was called. Annabelle and all that. So I'm pretty hyped because, obviously this guy knows horror. And, I wasn't a big fan of the Resident Evil movies. So
that's kind of an understatement coming from you, bro.
Oh, man. I'm really heated about those movies.
Yeah.
I like them.
Yeah. Lebo said this in a message, and I was like, are you serious, man? So tell us, Lebo, why do you like the Resident Evil movies?
Mia Jovovich.
Sure.
That's only two words I need.
Let me just say this. Sure, she's an attractive woman, but that's not enough to save that franchise.
You could put her in a movie about coffee beans and like how they're planted, and I would watch it.
Well,
no, but I really did. The first two were really good. The third, well, to me anyway. The third one, the third one was just like, what in the crap are we doing here? And then after that, it just kind of fell off the face. I mean, she landed a jet on the hotel or some crap in that one, and that was whatever. But the first two were excellent, and then you had Michelle Rodriguez in it too, so that helped.
Oh, you got a Michelle Rodriguez fetish?
Not a fetish. It's just I enjoy watching her movies.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. What were you about to say, Dakota?
I said I will say 2 was the closest to the games.
Yeah.
I mean,
I will say this about the movies. They kind of. God, I have so much to say about these movies. So, the one good aspect of it, I guess I'll say, which is what you're kind of going with, is that they brought characters and stuff into the fold, at least that were from the series. But the problem was that it was so out to left field. Like, I don't even know what the hell was going on in that franchise. And I had no idea what Capcom was even thinking in the first place. The interesting history behind that movie is like, Dustin, do you remember back when Resident Evil 2 came out, like on PlayStation, and on the front cover, we're talking like the day one edition, right? It had a little sticker or something that said like, you could win a role in the movie, the upcoming Resident Evil movie. Remember that?
Yeah, man, I forgot about that. But yeah, I had that version.
Yeah. So the deal was that like, okay, Resident Evil was really heavily inspired by, like, the developers have said that Resident Evil was heavily inspired by George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead, obviously, which is, we're talking the movie that started the entire modern zombie genre, right? And so it made sense that initially Capcom had hired George Romero to direct the movie, the original Resident Evil movie that was going to come out. Now, at some point during the development, Capcom decided that the script that George Romero wrote was too much like the game. And then so they canceled Romero, or they got rid of Romero's script and basically hired a new director and writer, which is Paul Anderson. And of course, Paul Anderson, I believe this is married to Mila Jovovich or whatever her name is. So of course he got her into the movie. He has that like what do you call it? Rob Zombie syndrome, where he has to put his like horrible acting wife and everything. And you know, Rob Zombie's a crap director in the first place. I'm not a big fan of Paul S. Anderson either. So basically, you know, what could have been one of the greatest horror films of, I'm obviously extremely passionate about this because when I first heard, like, I loved Resident Evil because I loved all things horror at that time. And, you know, I love Romero's zombie movies. So for me, the combination of Resident Evil with George Romero was going to be like, you know, the greatest thing to ever happen on celluloid, right? But Capcom destroyed that. And I think that was the first in a series of moves that's kind of led Capcom down like a spiral. But they've made a lot of really iffy decisions over the years. But that's a topic for a whole nother podcast. But I'm just really, you know, I've always been really pissed off, I guess, that movie never happened. And then, you know, I went and bought tickets like when Resident Evil finally came out in theaters, and I walked out there like, what in the world was this? I mean, it was totally different than the game. It had, you know, I mean, it had some similarities. Obviously, it had zombies, it had the lab underground and stuff. But otherwise, it was a completely, essentially different story, you know?
They kind of went the Super Mario Brothers movie route.
Yeah. And it was an action movie, not a horror movie. I mean, it had like Matrix, like, you know, bullet time and
Super
stuff.
Super Mario Brothers with Resident Evil. That was an abomination.
Yeah, so is this.
Yeah.
Absolute abomination.
I honestly would rather watch the Super Mario movie than have to watch these garbage Resident Evil movies.
I'd rather watch the Super Mario Brothers cartoon.
Super Mario Brothers cartoon was actually good, though.
That was actually good. Yeah, I'll give you that.
I mean, Resident Evil is, you know, at least for the first 3 games, you know, the first few games was like a, you know, hardcore like horror story that had, I mean, obviously some kind of corny like B film elements, but it definitely wasn't no Matrix style action film, which is what it ended up becoming.
What's weird about that is because it came out at the same time Resident Evil 4 was coming out. So I wonder if that's why Capcom did it, because Resident Evil 4 was more geared towards action-packed like combat. I mean, it was a little more survival horror. Yeah, but it was action. It was an action game, and I don't know if that totally correlated with that or not.
No, I don't know what the hell they were thinking. I don't know what they were thinking. They lost their minds, basically. Seriously, imagine what could have been. Like George Romero directing the Resident Evil movie. And I've actually read the script. The script's available on the internet if anyone wants to read it. There were differences. It wasn't 100% exactly like the Resident Evil game. For the most part, it was. The basic plot was the same, but there were some differences. Like the biggest difference was that Chris Redfield wasn't like a STARS member. If I remember correctly, he was like Jill Valentine's boyfriend or something, and basically he went to go find her, and that's how he ended up getting involved in like all the events at the mansion. But essentially, it basically was the same as far as like, you know, all the stuff that happens in the mansion and stuff was very similar to what was in the movie and the game. So could have been a really great film. I really hope that, you know, with this new movie that's going to be coming out, you know, this reboot, I hope that they go for a hardcore, you know, R-rated horror film that isn't an action film. I want, you know, like basically I want them to make it a true film adaptation of the Resident Evil game.
What I'm worried about is if they're going to copy it off of the original games, or if they're going to go along with Resident Evil 7. Have like a found footage type movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't care. Even if they do a found footage movie, but it's based on the original Resident Evil, that would be kind of cool, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't think Juan would.
A great concept, actually.
I don't know if Juan would do that.
What do you mean? Like an action film?
Well, I don't know if he'd have a found footage. He hasn't done a found footage film.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of, but It's possible, you know. I don't think it's going to be a found footage film. It would be really interesting, though. It'd be kind of cool if it was shot from the perspective of like the cameras on the Stars team. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like officer cam sort of thing.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool. But I don't know. I just want a hardcore horror film. You know what I mean? I want a true like representation of what I played as a kid. Because I mean that game changed my life. Like I put Resident Evil like basically as far as the best games ever made. Super Mario Bros. 3 is number 1, and then number 2 is between probably Resident Evil and Breath of the Wild. Like that's how good. Like I love Resident Evil. I would even say that the only franchise in the world that I'm as I geek out about more than Star Wars or as much as Star Wars is Resident Evil.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always liked Resident Evil. I've been more of a lukewarm fan, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I love the first Resident Evil, of course, and then Resident Evil 2 is probably my favorite of the franchise.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And then 4 was good, even if it was different. And then I felt like I haven't played 7, and it looks really interesting. But
see, I
go ahead, sorry.
Without spoiling it, because I know that was a big thing. 7 is probably the best Resident Evil game since Resident Evil 3.
Yeah. Well,
that's not saying much.
I have to say, well let me just do this real quick. Let me go around the room and ask everyone what's the last Resident Evil game they played. Obviously, Dakota, yours is Resident Evil 7. What about you, Lebo? What's the last Resident Evil game you played?
I played 5,
okay.
And I played it in one day. And that was the last one, and that's why I've never picked up another one because I'm like that was stupid.
Yeah.
I think the one I played before that was probably 2, and I might have played it for just a few minutes, like because I didn't have a PlayStation at the time. I had an N64.
So you're not a diehard. So that kind of explains things a little bit. Why you actually like the Resident Evil movies? It's because you're not like a diehard Resident Evil.
Oh no, I'm
what's weird? Okay. All my friends who haven't played Resident Evil love the movies because if you're not a Resident Evil fan and you watch those movies, they're good fun.
Yeah,
but it's tainted if you're a fan.
Yeah, I can see like if I had no idea what Resident Evil was, which is probably why because that I was reading the other day that I was totally blown away by this, but I guess it explains why there were 6 movies, right? 5 or 6 movies.
6.
There's 6. But one thing I found interesting is that it's one of the highest grossing horror franchises of all time. And actually, as far as like franchises go, it's only behind Alien as far as horror franchises as being the biggest like box office smash.
You tell me it's sold better than Freddy or Jason?
Evidently, that's what I was reading the other day.
Yeah, it's a lot. I think it's a lot bigger on the foreign market.
Yeah, it's huge. Like this last movie evidently was like one of the biggest box office openings in Chinese history. So it's huge overseas. And it's obviously huge here too. Like people either really love them or really hate them. And Dakota's right. It seems to be like people who are diehard fans of the game don't like the movies because we feel like it's not a true representation of what we played. But people who aren't familiar with Resident Evil seem to really enjoy them. I guess because they're like action films, like horror/action film.
I mean, the movies feel like a spit in the face.
Mm-hmm.
To us fans,
a slap to the face.
While I agree with you, I take it as it is and go, this is Resident Evil the movie, this is Resident Evil the game. And it is completely different. It's not even. I mean, it's bad in the fact that it doesn't make any sense with the game.
Yeah.
But it's still a decent movie. Now, I'm not a fan by any means. I don't go, oh, crap, Resident Evil's on. I got to go watch it. But I liked it.
I have such
It's like Doom, the movie Doom.
Yeah.
That was a horrible representation of the game because the game was a first-person shooter.
Yeah.
But
well, they did have a first-person segment in that movie.
For all of 5 minutes. But it was a decent movie. Like, I liked that movie. Like, it was corny as hell, but it was a good action movie.
I don't know. Go ahead, Dakota. Sorry.
To put it in terms for Andrew, I mean, he loves Skyrim, for example.
Yeah.
It'd be like taking Skyrim and changing almost all the city names, all the character names, changing, almost even putting like almost a sci-fi element in it and throwing that in, and then calling it Skyrim or Elder Scrolls the movie.
Exactly.
Well, now, see, I'm a big Stephen King guy, and I've read a lot of Stephen King books, and he's had a lot of Stephen King adaptations.
Yeah. Oh, they're all.
And none of them are even close to what.
Yeah. Well, I think that's exactly what the problem is. You nailed it right in the head.
But while I agree with the Skyrim theory there, or the Skyrim example, if it was a good movie and I'm like, damn, that was kind of neat, I would go, yeah, that's a good movie. Like Dreamcatcher. Dreamcatcher had nothing to do with the actual book, but it was a good movie. I like it.
I also think another one. Oh, that's off subject. Maybe we can do a whole podcast on Stephen King.
We're all fans. Stephen King podcast at some point,
especially when Dark Tower gets close to coming out. But
no, I totally agree. I think that's exactly what it is. Is that I just think that people who aren't really that familiar with the storyline obviously can appreciate it more. But those of us who are diehard Resident Evil fans just feel so disappointed by what we got, and so I just have this hatred for those films. Like, I mean, I've watched every single one and just been pissed off. I just watched the final chapter the other day, and I just wanted to smash my TV afterwards. I can't stand those movies.
I didn't watch any of them, but did they even brain Wesker into the series at all?
Yeah, Wesker's in it. Yeah.
Did he?
Yep. Mila Jovovich, like, this is how bad I hate that franchise. Like, I didn't mind her as an actress before that, but now I associate her with that abortion of a film franchise. So now I can't stand her. Like, I won't even watch anything with her in it just because, like, now I associate her with destroying the Resident Evil film franchise. So I have like a hatred, like, I have like just unimaginable hatred for that series.
Oh, it's understandable.
It's like a fire burning inside of me. So the news that they're going to rebooting this is great, and I really hope that they do it right this time because I mean, when did the first Resident Evil come out? The first movie, it came out in 2002.
2002.
So 15 years I've been waiting.
Oh, wow. That movie came out 2 years before Resident Evil.
Well, even longer than that, because I've been waiting for a film adaptation since I played the first game. I remember when I played it thinking, holy crap, this would be an awesome movie.
The first game came out in 96.
No, okay, this makes me wonder, okay? The movie came out before Resident Evil 4 came out. And remember Resident Evil 4?
You're right.
Went through a development cycle where it was a really close quarters.
It came out in 05.
There were like 3 or 4 different versions of Resident Evil 4.
I wonder if the success from that movie made them
probably
more towards action.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it. And I guarantee you the success of that movie probably had a big part of that series going even more action oriented in the future.
I got the list of the timeline releases here. It was Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, Nemesis.
Yeah.
Then Survivor, Code Veronica,
yeah.
Gaiden, Survivor 2, Code Veronica. Then 2002 came around and they did a remake of the original.
Amazing.
That's
the bet. I mean, that's like the definitive version of Resident Evil. Holy smokes!
Yeah, that's like the best game.
And then they did Resident Evil 0, then Dead Aim, Outbreak, Outbreak File 2, and then Resident Evil 4 in 05.
Yeah, there's been a lot. There was a big gap of time there because Resident Evil 4 it kind of went through, like I mentioned, development hell. Where like there were multiple versions of it. Like I can't remember they given different names to it, but like one's like the fog version, and like one's like the haunted house version or something like that.
Like, those all look so amazing.
Yeah, they
like,
do.
Like the one with like the weird, I think it's like a fisherman ghost or something like that.
Hookman.
Hookman. Yeah.
Maybe that's the version called the Hookman version I'm thinking of.
It has like those creepy little dolls that attack you.
It looked amazing. And that's interestingly, that's one thing about Resident Evil is like all the like, early versions of like the beta versions of the sequels seem cooler than the versions we got.
Yeah, I know. That's like a tradition.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 1.5.
Oh, man. Yeah. 1.5 was like the ultimate, like that was the one game. If I could like have any game, ever, like if there's one game that I wish would have gotten developed, it would have been 1.5. I wish that would have been finished.
Well, I've read actually that a version of it has finally leaked out.
Yeah.
And, like, people are actually, there's a team of people that are trying to finish it.
Cool. Yeah, there's a fully playable version of it, but it's missing some of the assets like enemies and stuff like that. And I've actually watched the entire thing, and it's definitely better, I think, than and more atmospheric than the version that we got. But I mean, and just think about it. I mean, the version we got was a classic,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I haven't watched all the footage, but I've read that it's supposed to be like a lot more violent and like gory or something.
And it just the look of it's different. Like the police station in Resident Evil 2, the version that was released, has more of kind of like a vintage like Americana feel, but like the version that originally was the original version was more of like a kind of a sterile like modern like police station, you know.
Yeah,
modern style, I guess.
Yeah.
I just liked it. I don't know. It just looked more interesting.
Yeah, and like they had the different female lead character, like Elza or something
Elza.
like that.
Yep.
She looked cool.
Yeah, she was like the prototype for Claire.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was enemies that also were never in any other Resident Evil game. Like there was like mutated gorillas and like cockroach man.
Cockroach
man, yeah.
The mutated gorillas did make it to Outbreak though.
Oh yeah, they were in Outbreak. Yeah, because there was like that zoo.
Yeah. So I guess maybe that was part of the inspiration there. Who knows?
Probably.
Did Elsa ever appear in any Resident Evil game? No.
Yeah, she looked cooler than Claire, I thought.
Yeah.
She had different clothing and stuff. I think she had different colored hair too.
Yeah. Wasn't she wearing it? It looked almost like a racing outfit.
Yeah,
or something.
She was like a biker chick.
Yeah. But yeah, Resident Evil 2. I actually, in preparation for this podcast, I started a replay of that, and man, that game is harder than I remember.
Yeah. Those old tank controls are hard now.
Yeah.
You know?
But like, I mean, it's just the level of unforgivingness you don't see in modern games.
Yeah,
like the whole like ink ribbon thing. I mean, that's kind of annoying, but man, it makes things tense.
Yeah, it does. And the limited ammo and everything.
Yeah, you have to really choose when to fight or flee.
Yeah, and then also a big, another big thing for me that I remember with those was just, I don't know, there was something, I think what's missing from like the modern Resident Evil games is just that kind of atmosphere that like obviously 4, 5, and 6 kind of went like a more towards like the action route, but like, I don't know, I just miss that like survival horror aspect of like, like I said, limited ammo, like.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Even the tank controls, like the weird camera angles to where it had suspense because you could hear like an enemy, but you couldn't quite see it. You know?
Oh yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, that's something else I picked up on when I was replaying how great those camera angles are. Even though, I mean, in theory, they're not supposed to be good. Since, you can't really see what you need to, but man, they create suspense.
Yeah.
They don't really make anything like that anymore. Anything top down, almost. I mean, that's not really top down, I guess, but third person like that. Like the Dying Light is very similar to your Resident Evils, but it's all first person.
Yeah, I think I think that's part of it. I think maybe the what Resident Evil had going for it was because of the limitations of the hardware and everything, and it the backgrounds were like all pre-rendered, which is another reason why that they used, the various angles. But, with modern games, I think it kind of takes some of the suspense out of it. You know what I mean? And then now also like with the, Resident Evil 5 and 6, I hate those games. They're so bad. They like, basically Chris Redfield's just like pumped up on steroids, like
action Boulder punching.
Boulder. Oh my god, I forgot about that.
Oh my god. Okay, this I have to say, since we went there, one of the most disappointing like endings to a character. I loved Wesker. Like Wesker was one of my favorite characters of any video game franchise ever, and so like I thought he was such an interesting character in Resident Evil 1, and then when you thought he's dead, and then he comes back in Code Veronica, right? So it was so cool. I remember that moment. Oh my God, Wesker's still alive, right? And then the payoff in the end is like you fight and hit this weird like battle in like a volcano, and he's like throwing rocks at you, and you're like smashing him, and like it was just a horrible ending.
Literally.
And the dialogue, Wesker's like, I'm going to take over the world, like cheesy cliche, like villain dialogue was awful. I thought it was more interesting in like Resident Evil 1 and in Resident Evil Code Veronica, where he was basically like working for like another company and was like trying to steal samples so that they could create like, competing BOW weapons.
I mean, he still did that in 4. He was a background antagonist.
Exactly. And he was more interesting like that. And then in Resident Evil 5, he's basically like a Bond villain.
Yeah.
That game was so bad.
Garbage. Stinking pile of garbage.
I actually didn't hate Resident Evil 5. I mean, I thought it was even below Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was like one of the first games I think that had like a good co-op story mode like that.
Yeah.
So I remember playing that online with my friend Brett. And like I have good memories of that whole experience.
I don't remember much of that game because I was toasted. I was pretty drunk when I was playing that game. I do remember Wesker, but I don't remember Wesker. But yeah, I remember it being very bad.
Well, he was like the main guy in Resident Evil 1. Remember, he was like the leader of Stars or whatever. And then
I know. I'm just saying I don't remember him in that game because
it was bad. There was like whole like cut scenes where it was literally like I'm gonna build a new superhuman race and all this, and I was like, oh my god, really?
I remember didn't you have to take him out inside that castle or the big mansion room or something?
No,
that's 6. So that's not 6, is it?
He's dead in 6.
Yeah, he's dead in 6. He died.
Well, hell, I don't know what I'm talking about then. Never mind.
As far as I'm concerned, the last good Resident Evil game. Let me just say this. I've played part of Resident Evil 7, so I'm not considering that at this point as part of the discussion. What I've played, I haven't finished it just because I haven't had the time. Like I got it when it came out and I got so busy and it just kind of, ended up on the wayside. But what I did play of it, it's a very good game. It's like probably the best Resident Evil game since Code Veronica as far as like atmosphere. And they actually do it right. Like I want to really like Resident Evil 7 because it kind of captures that feel of the original game as far as like the atmosphere and the horror and stuff. The problem is it's not a Resident Evil game because it doesn't quite follow, the storyline as much, I guess. I don't know. I haven't played the full thing, so I don't know. Maybe it does. But what I'm saying though is like it doesn't have traditional zombies and like, BOW monsters and stuff, which is what I really want. It's kind of like, a horror game. It feels like a horror game set like in Appalachia or something.
The problem with that is you got to look at the timeline. The timeline of that game takes place 2017. Okay?
Yeah.
It's way after all that.
Yeah.
But Resident Evil 7 is a soft reboot of the series.
Yeah.
Without spoiling much of anything, it basically, to me, it seems like it's wiping clean 4, 5, and 6.
But it's still not like there aren't zombies and stuff, and that's what I want. I want like the original Resident Evil style game, but like with modern controls. And that they nailed with Resident Evil 7, they nailed what I want as far as like atmosphere and control scheme and just the overall, feel and look of the game. It's just that the storyline isn't there. Like it's not like I want some kind of basically if they just took the Resident Evil 7 engine and remade Resident Evil 1, I'd be like, oh, that's pretty cool. And just restart the whole series that way.
As someone who actually beat the game and finished it, I actually put it above Veronica, though.
Yeah.
Story-wise, especially towards the final part, which you're just going to have to play it and then you'll figure that out.
I was going to say, as far as that game, like, that aside, I feel like that Capcom's finally listening to fans. Like, what we kind of talked about earlier, that the Resident Evil Films franchise was really popular. I think Capcom got mixed messages from that, oh, well, maybe they want more action, right? And so they kind of went on this, like, more action-oriented kind of spree for, like, several games. And then there was a backlash, finally, with Resident Evil 6, where people were like, no, we don't want this, And so they finally listened and came and brought back Resident Evil as a horror franchise.
And I also remember when that game trailer launched, people were immediately comparing it to like Outlast, saying, well,
yeah,
here comes Resident Evil copying Outlast. But in fact, it's just a trend of horror games now.
Yeah.
You have to kind of follow that.
I mean, look, I don't want another Resident Evil game with tank controls.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, that is an archaic, when you go back and play it, sure, it still has, atmosphere and stuff, and it's still like a good game. But then at the same time, you're remembering like, God, these control schemes sucked, So I want basically I guess my ideal Resident Evil game, if I could get Capcom to make it, would be to take Resident Evil 7's, visual style and gameplay, but remake Resident Evil 1, or at least make a continuation of the series that involves Umbrella Corporation, like zombies, BOWs, all that stuff.
Well, we are getting them remastered 2 and 3, so
yeah. But still, I want something new. Yeah, they're remaking Resident Evil 2.
Just like they did Resident Evil 1, but it's going to be pretty much common graphics.
Yeah.
New graphics.
Nice.
Yeah, it's going to be nice. I hope they do 3 also.
Did you also see? Yeah, they are going to do 3. They already said
Awesome.
they're going to do 3. But they're expanding it and adding more content to it, like they did RE1, which is what I think made RE1, that whole Lisa Trevor aspect, really added to the game.
Yeah, it really did. It added a lot of depth to the story.
That was like one of the creepiest parts, wasn't it?
Yeah. Heck yeah. And the cemetery that they added in the back of the mansion was really cool.
I didn't expect that playing it for the first time. I was expecting to run through the game because I've beaten the director's cut so many times. And then here I'm thrown off because they switched everything around, but it's so familiar at the same time. And I hope that's exactly how 2 comes out.
It's new, it's old, but it's new.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I mean, I was blown away. Like, I mean, obviously the original Resident Evil blew me away, but Resident Evil, the remake, like, was such a pleasant surprise. And it's amazing because, they re-released that game like last year, I think, or maybe the year before on PS4 and Xbox One, right? And they upgraded the graphics, like the resolution. It holds up. I mean, this is a GameCube game, and it holds up. Like, it looks fantastic.
I thought it was like one of the best looking games of that generation.
Oh, I think it's still one of the best looking games of all time.
I still think Resident Evil 0 looked better than Resident Evil 1, but I mean, I don't know if you played the remaster of that one, or I don't even know. Did you beat Resident Evil 0?
Oh, yeah. I like Resident Evil 0.
But yeah, they're both like that quality that they put into those games back then. Like, it's great, and it does still hold up.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I loved Code Veronica too. Like, for me, Code Veronica was the last true Resident Evil game because it was the last game that really kind of followed the original plot line from Resident Evil 1. Because basically, if you play Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, and then go to Code Veronica, it's one long continuing storyline that doesn't break. And then all of a sudden 4 is just like out to left field. It's like, oh, look, it's Leon and he's working for the president of the United States. You know what I mean? Like, what the hell?
I mean, it was a good game, but I mean,
I've always felt this way about Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 is a good game, but it's not a Resident Evil game. Like, I don't even think of it as a Resident Evil game. I think of it as like some spin-off.
Yeah,
they could have got away with a Resident Evil story just like they're doing with Star Wars now, and got away with it. I think.
Yeah. Or I would have rather have them just not even had Leon in the game, and just have some other random like character that they came up with, and then just call it a different franchise.
Just finally bring in Elsa.
Yeah. Call it Las Plagas.
Las Plagas.
But
like Resident Evil 4, really, I mean, just the sheer gameplay was outstanding. Like, the gunplay and all, like upgrading your weapons and I mean, all that was really, really good. But I mean, it definitely diverged from the normal Resident Evil storyline, and it kind of left that original storyline to just kind of be abandoned.
Yeah, and that's what always bugged me, is because I loved the Resident Evil storyline. People, go ahead.
Oh no, but people's been saying that they want new characters all the time, but then they introduced Ethan in RE7, and people complain about it.
Yeah,
and I mean, the only common character that's in RE7 is Chris Redfield, but I mean, I don't know why. I mean, a lot of fans like want something new out of Resident Evil, but then when they do something new, they complain or it's not good enough. So the reason we probably got Leon in the first place, and we got a whole 6 of like a who's who cast of characters, is because of that.
The problem is, though, and I think this is the biggest problem with Resident Evil, is that why we had this issue is that, like I said, Capcom split the audience, right?
Yeah.
So there's two different types of Resident Evil fans. There's Resident Evil, the old school Resident Evil fans like us that grew up playing the original Resident Evil on PlayStation and know what the game was originally like. And then you have like the more like younger generation that grew up playing like the more modern games where they're more action oriented, and that's what they're familiar with, you know?
Yeah, it does kind of put Capcom in a tough spot trying to please both of those camps.
Yeah, and that's what they did with Resident Evil 6. Like I don't know if you played Resident Evil 6, but like that game was, you know, obviously like, okay, it was split up into like different sections. So like you would play like a third of the game as one character, a third of the game as another character, and then a third of the game as, you know, a third character. So you'd start off as Leon Kennedy, and Leon Kennedy's section of the game was a little more kind of like the original Resident Evil style, like darker and like, you know, more exploration based and like creepier, had kind of zombie like creatures. Then in Chris Redfield's section, it was balls to the wall action, and it was like playing Call of Duty. Like he's running around with guns, like shooting stuff, blowing stuff up, and it was like they had no idea where to go with it, so they built one game that kind of tried to cater to everyone. And all it did was just, it was an awful game. Like it looked great as far as like graphics wise. I mean, it was like a beautiful game, but the gameplay was horrible, and it was so long. Like, I mean, I don't even know how I made it through that game. It was like way overly long. It just kind of like dragged on, like, and it was just seemed like a lot of filler, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like ultimately they please no one with that game.
Yeah, it was.
I wonder if the length on that one is why RE7 was so short as well.
I don't know. I think that a more shorter focus game's always better. Yeah. Like sometimes some games are just too dang long, you know? And me personally, since I don't have a lot of time to play anymore, like I prefer like a jump in and like, you know, like for me, I think probably the ideal like campaign for a game, like a single player mode is like 8 to 10 hours. Like that seems like a good.
I think RE7 I clocked at 12 or 13.
Well, see, that's not bad. But you know, these games, like my problem with open world games is that I lose interest because they take too long to play.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd put it at about 15 hours is my my ideal time. Anything over that, it's just I feel so bogged down.
Yeah,
that's probably why I'm not a big fan of Fallout 4, because there's just so much crap you can do.
Exactly.
See, I'm kind of the opposite. I love games that you can sink like, you know, a few hundred hours in, like Fallout especially.
Well, see, that's why I've never been into RPGs really, is because I don't have the attention span.
I mean, I have 200 plus on Witcher 3, so I can't say much.
Well, I mean, I have, you know, Skyrim I've put in tons of hours to, and I mean, there's other games too that I put in tons of hours to, but just for that, hey, I want to sit down and play a quick game of Resident Evil or something like that. Yeah. You know, give me 20 hours, maybe 15, 20 hours.
Yeah, and the problem with 6 is that the direction was just all over the place, which made you confused. Yeah. It felt overwhelming to play it. Like,
and I had no idea really. Like, there's so many ideas. It was just like, you know, like Breath of the Wild, where you throw all the ingredients in a pot and then you come out with something. That's basically what it felt like. But I don't know. I love Resident Evil. I love the franchise. I remember how good it was at one point, and then it just all of a sudden kind of fell off with Resident Evil 4. Like I said, Resident Evil 4 is a good game. You know, don't come at me with pitchforks here, but it just isn't a Resident Evil game. And just like Resident Evil 7, I like it, like what I played of it so far, but it's still not Resident Evil at the end of the day to me.
Your complaint with that one, it isn't the camera scheme, it's the
story, I like it. No, I like it. Like I like the game a lot. Like, you know, when I was playing it, there was even moments where I really like it felt like I was playing Resident Evil 1, like exploring the house and stuff. I kind of got that vibe, which is why I really liked it, because like it kind of harkened back to the original Resident Evil. But the problem is that it's like some kind of infected like hillbilly family with, you know, some kind of mold virus that infected them, as opposed to, you know, the T virus creating like zombies. And like basically if Resident Evil 7 kept everything that it does as far as like gameplay wise and graphically it's perfect. It just needs to follow the original Resident Evil storyline more.
So I'm a big person that's saying Resident Evil 7 is a resurgence of that game. You bring back the safe zones, you bring back the pretty much. I played on Madhouse, so you were limited on saves, you were limited on ammo.
No, it does. They capture the feeling of Resident Evil perfectly. That's my point. The only flaw with it is the fact that it doesn't involve the T-virus, tyrants, hunters, zombies, lickers, all those cool Umbrella Corporation, Wesker, all those cool plot points.
Maybe you didn't play it long enough.
Yeah,
maybe. I don't want to spoil it, but
I'm sure. Like I don't spoil it for me. I'm assuming that at the end it does tie in with Umbrella somehow.
There is a reason that they're calling the new Chris Redfield DLC not My Hero. We'll go with that.
So I know it has to somehow tie in. I mean, even Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6 loosely kind of had some threads that tied back to Resident Evil, but not really. Like at the end of the day, it wasn't a true Resident Evil game.
Let me say something real quick. I don't know if any of you've seen what Chris Redfield looks like in that game. But I'm so glad that they ditched the steroid.
Yeah, I hated that. That was so annoying.
He looks like almost like a mocap version of what Resident Evil 1 remakes Chris Redfield looked like. I'm
glad, because that was ridiculous. I remember when I saw it, I was like, what in the world? Like, what is this? Like, what happened to Chris Redfield? All of a sudden, did he start taking steroids? Like,
my fingers are crossed for Wesker on what he'll look like, or maybe Leon if they bring him in.
It was comical. It was so bad. It was so bad.
He looks even worse than the new Vendetta.
Yeah.
Holy crap!
I love. That's while we're talking about that, I love the Resident Evil animated movies. They're actually really good. They do have a little more action than the games, but they also at least follow the storyline, right? So
they're more canon than the actual game.
Yeah, they're more canon than most of the games are. But the movies, those movies are actually pretty good. I actually really enjoy those. So I'm looking forward to Vendetta. But yeah, I did see a trailer for it where it showed it they were in a hallway shooting zombies, and I was like, oh no, it's going the way of.
It reminded me of what is that?
The Matrix?
No, Kingsman, that scene where he just goes nuts in the church.
I've never seen the Kingsman, but
you haven't seen.
Oh, that's an awesome movie.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it either.
That almost looked like shot for shot from Kingsman when he goes nuts in the church.
Hey, you guys can't hear me spinning my fidget spinner, can you?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay.
You might be hearing me spin mine.
Sorry, guys.
Oh,
I just got one today.
That took a turn.
Did you get one for real, Dustin?
Yeah.
Yes, that's awesome. Aren't these things addictive?
Yeah, it's weird.
I know. It's such a simple thing, man. But I love it.
If you guys want to do a fidget spinner podcast,
yeah, we're gonna do next week. We're doing Geeksation Live Podcast number 6, fidget spinner.
I'll come with my man-made fidget spinner.
We're just gonna sit there and fidget spin.
Yeah, Rob's literally gonna live stream himself use this.
I'm starting a new Geeksation series just called Fidget Spinners.
Jesus Christ. Off subject.
All right, guys, we're totally going off subject, but yeah.
One thing that I noticed when playing Resident Evil 2 that I forgot about was how awesome the voice acting was. I mean, it was so terrible, but it's just so hilarious and
that's what I said. That's kind of what I meant was even the original Resident Evil 2, they had I hope this isn't Chris's blood. It's just so bad. It was good, It
had all the classic lines, I'm the master of unlocking.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that game. That game is so great, man. I like a little bit of cheese with my horror,
I hope that they keep the cheesy lines from 2. But they're bringing in the voice actor for Leon, so
yeah.
The new voice actor for Leon. So
what always cracks me up about the animations for the PlayStation 1 is of course they're so blocky, and then they'll just move their arm up and down. So that when they're talking.
One character that I wish would get his own game where he's the main character is Barry.
Yes.
He was always my favorite character.
He had
he was in Resident Evil Revelations 2.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Like, as the main character?
He's a playable character.
Yeah, he's one of the playable characters.
He finally came back. I haven't played that one. I haven't played Resident Evil Revelations either.
Barry Burton was a boss. I don't care what you say.
But from what I hear, one interesting thing is that evidently the Revelations spin-off series is better and more like, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? How do you say canonical?
Canonical, yeah.
Canonical. Let's make sure I'm saying that right. Than the Resident Evil like 4, 5, and 6.
Huh. What system is this on? I don't think
it came out. Revelations, the first one came out for 3DS, and then it was ported to PS3, and it's being ported to PS4 and Xbox One later this year.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Revelation 2 came out for PS3 and PS4 and Xbox One.
I just remembered what Andrew might have been talking about with Wesker. The DLC for Resident Evil 5, where you play as Jill and Chris, and you're in the mansion.
Oh, yeah. That's it. I played that too drunk.
Hold on. There's a DLC for Resident Evil 5 where you go to the Spencer Mansion.
Yep.
Like,
oh man, I didn't know
from
that.
the original, the same mansion from the original game.
No, it's Oswald. What's his name?
Oh, so his new mansion.
It's in Europe.
Oh yeah, I did know about that. Yeah. I never played that DLC, but I remember hearing about it. That was like the only part of it that looked cool because it kind of continued the storyline.
They should have just cut everything else out and just did based around that.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Because that's pretty much the prologue, like the prologue of how Jill gets captured by Wesker in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it had direct ties to the original game.
Yeah, I mean, going through the Umbrella Corporation, like Spencer Estate like that, it was freaking amazing.
Well, you know where I always kind of imagined like Resident Evil 4 to go, like, and that's why I was so disappointed when it came out. Do you remember with Code Veronica at the very beginning? The game starts off with Claire, and she's at some Umbrella corporate headquarters in like Europe or something, and basically she infiltrates that place, and then they start shooting at her, and they capture her, and then she gets sent to prison on that island, right?
Yeah. That's
kind of where I figured the franchise would go, would be that like future games would involve the surviving STARS members basically taking down Umbrella labs and like headquarters and stuff around the globe. Because, you know, Umbrella was, according to the game, was like a multinational corporation, and they had labs all over the place and were doing all these crazy experiments. So that's kind of where I wanted them to go with it, but I guess it kind of would eventually have gotten old.
Did they ever say that Umbrella was dead?
Basically, yeah. Like I think in Resident Evil 4 and 5, it basically alluded to the fact that Umbrella had gone under because the world found out about like all the weird experiments and stuff they were doing, and basically their stock plummeted and the company just folded.
See, that's an interesting tidbit for me then. I can't. It's so hard not to talk about it. Because then, if you'd at least played, we could talk about where it's gonna go.
Yeah.
Because they completely rewrote that then.
Interesting. Well, I think there was always like there were so many Resident Evil games, and so I'm not like up on all the like latest history, but like I know that with the Wii, there was a bunch of games that came out like shooters and stuff, like Umbrella Chronicles and like Dark Side Chronicles or something like that. And basically those further explored the collapse of Umbrella, and evidently there's like a company called Neo Umbrella. Does any of this like ring a bell?
What color? Is it just normal color scheme?
I think so, yeah. But
I'm so confused because there's art, like, I don't know if I'm even allowed to say this, but there's umbrellas in 7.
Oh, I figured they were. Yeah.
But they're like a blue logo, like Umbrella blue.
Yeah, it's probably this like I think someone's trying to, like in the mythos now, someone's trying to revive Umbrella. Basically.
Diet Umbrella.
But that's I'm confused.
Yeah, it's the whole. Well, Resident Evil has a confusing storyline.
Well, good God, there's 300 freaking games.
Yeah, it's gotten really convoluted. But
you said you didn't want to know what the virus was, right?
Yeah,
like,
I don't want to know like how. I don't want to know how the family got infected or any of that because I don't know yet.
Okay, but this is what's interesting is because it's Chris Redfield that's sporting Umbrella Blue.
So Umbrella, I'm telling you.
Well, I need to finish playing that game sometime, but
Umbrella Zero.
Like, unless that was created to like clean up the mess that they made after whatever, or like stars obviously couldn't be a thing. Maybe that's what they went and did.
Yeah.
Instead of that, whatever bioterrorism bullcrap that was in 5.
And Tricell.
Yeah, Tricell. Well, Tricell I wasn't so much upset with.
Well, Tricell was like a competing company, right?
Yeah, so that's the one that Wesker sold.
Yeah, which made sense, which was kind of cool as far as that plot line, because like I said, in Code Veronica, it was really interesting because Wesker was going around trying to get. I mean, even in Resident Evil 2, like that whole thing popped off because they were trying to capture a sample of the G virus. Remember? So Birkin basically infected himself, and then all those rats like infected the population of Raccoon City.
Can I just say that I would love a video game that's more based around the relationship between William Birkin and Albert Wesker pre-Resident Evil 1?
Yeah, that'd be cool. I just want to see.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, oh my God, I saw this the other day. I saw online someone did a Birkin cosplay, like Birkin that's like transformed. It's amazing. They nailed it. It looks exactly like like in the game, but it's like Hollywood quality. It's pretty amazing. You guys should look that up.
Speaking of, that's funny because the person who did Jill Valentine mocap for Resident Evil 1 is coming back for the DLC for Resident Evil 7.
There was mocap for Resident Evil 1?
Well, the facial anime, they took her face and put it in as the model.
Oh, you're talking about for the remake.
Yeah, for the remake.
I was gonna say, man, I don't think they used mocap for Resident Evil 1.
Definitely not. But yeah, for the remake, she's gonna be reprising that role for.
Because if they did mocap for Resident Evil 1, all they had to use was like a cardboard box.
But yeah, where I get that from is she's like one of the most. She does cosplay of like Jill Valentine, and she's like one of the most highly paid cosplayers, and that's where she got that job in the first place because she originally was doing cosplay for the PlayStation version of Resident Evil.
That's cool.
So that's how she got that job. I just had to. That's a fun fact of the day since you were already bringing up cosplay.
Yeah, it was amazing, man. Like I've seen some pretty awesome cosplay in my life, but that one took the cake, man. That dude just killed it. But yeah, I just love that. The original Resident Evil is my favorite of the entire series. And it was just it was corny to a certain extent, obviously, like the cheesy voice acting and stuff, but the storyline of it was just so good and like so engrossing,
First time you played it, you didn't expect it
to
happen like that.
I remember my first experience with Resident Evil was Bond playing it. I was like, watching him play it, and I, fell in love. And then of course I had to play it for myself.
I remember I had like the original like long box version
of
Resident Evil. I wonder if those are rare.
Oh yeah, they are. Those are like the most collectible probably copy of Resident Evil in existence.
Yeah, cool.
Is the original long box. But yeah, it was just, oh my God, it was such an amazing game. So ahead of its time and just so different than anything else that was out there.
Yeah, it was really the first real horror game. I guess there have been some kind of horror-ish games, I think, on the PC, but
here's what's interesting is I went back and played it because I got an emulator and I got it for PC. There's a lot of stuff on there I didn't remember. Maybe I have a different version, but I remember you remember the intro credits of where it's like really cheesy 80s action. Yeah. I don't remember Chris Redfield smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
That
actor, I always for some reason remember when it cuts to like each actor and it has their name, Chris Redfield, and then he's like twitches his eye for some reason.
But I don't remember is that a Japanese version where he's like, because this was super gory too.
Yeah, it was originally, I mean, that's a Japanese game. It was the cinemas and everything, like the animatics were all like Japanese. They weren't Japanese actors, obviously. They were like Western actors. But you can tell it's Japanese because the dialogue is horrible. Like, the direction on it's so bad. But yeah, the uncensored version, what I always find interesting is, remember the cutscenes that you're talking about, Dakota, were heavily censored in the US version, right? And then with the release of the director's cut, they were supposed to be uncensored and they weren't. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah. That was like a major fiasco.
Oh man.
I don't know why I don't get it. It's a mature game, but they took out smoking cigarettes as a censorship to the US version, and I don't understand why.
I think he did smoke cigarettes in the original, right?
He did in the Japanese version, or at least the ROM I have, but then I have the director's cut and he doesn't. So I have two versions.
Yeah,
like
I get confused as to which one's which anymore because but
I think Joseph's murder scene.
Joseph.
Yeah.
Oh man, and that was probably my only problem with the Resident Evil remake. Was it like the sequence at the beginning was like CGI, and I preferred like the original like cheesy acting and stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Like I understand why they didn't do that though.
Oh, I love that. I don't know why they cut that out. Like that would have been. They should have made a whole freaking movie like that, man. That would have been. That would have been awesome.
That's what Robert really wanted.
Some direct-to-video like Resident Evil.
When Robert heard George Romero was doing
with a $10 budget. But yeah, no, that was great stuff, man.
Yeah, on the topic of the remake, I think one of the all-time creepiest parts in the Resident Evil series was like the first time you encounter like the red zombies.
Oh man!
Crimson
Heads.
Yeah, Crimson Heads. Yeah.
That was another thing they threw in that totally like threw you through a loop because that wasn't part of the first game.
Yeah, I mean, once zombies were dead, they stayed dead.
And all of a sudden, you see this corpse lying there, and it gets up, and it's like
it runs at you.
Yeah, that was genius, man.
Yeah.
And that was the only time. Like, I hate running zombies. Like, I've always felt like running zombies. Like, the modern zombie isn't as good as like the old school, like slow, like, they surround you kind of zombie.
Yeah.
And they did it right with that one.
Yep.
Kind of like, and it made sense to the plot line too, because the T virus mutates, it's the subject, right? So the original zombie was just the first form. And then from my understanding, actually, I don't know if you guys knew this, but like, it basically, the life cycle of a zombie in Resident Evil is, traditional slow zombie, Crimson Head, then to a licker.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So the lickers are actually like a more evolved version of the T virus.
Lickers, yeah, I always loved like hunters. I think they were my favorite.
Yeah, that was the coolest monsters.
And they're pretty creepy too when you first encounter them, because like I remember there's like that whole like cut scene, I think, where you kind of like maybe I don't remember this right, but I think it's like the cut scene is like showing it from like the hunter's perspective.
Yeah. It's like after you go outside and you come back to the mansion.
It's like right when you're about to put the crests in to go.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you see that POV video and you're like, what in the world?
I remember though, if you play that on hard on the remake, they decapitate you with one shot.
Yeah.
Like,
oh man.
It's awful.
Another thing that blows my mind about the Resident Evil remake is that like even today, like when you play that and look at the character models, how amazingly detailed they are, like the zombies and stuff, you can see like flesh rotting off of them and stuff, and like their teeth, like parts of their face are missing. Like the original, when you go back and look at the original zombies in Resident Evil, they're like blocky, like really horrible looking, Yeah. But in the remake, I mean, just the level of detail, like even like the hunters, you can see like the individual scales on them and stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those games that really managed to like be ahead of the technological curve, like graphic wise.
And here's another thing I think what made the original Resident Evil a little better. You had to do a little research, okay? You'd pick up these notes and you'd read into it, and there isn't much of that in RE7, and I don't remember much of it at all.
Plot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more discovery plot. Like, you don't know what's going on if you just play through the game unless you sit there and go in those nooks and crannies and try to figure it out for yourself.
Well, and
that's a good point.
That is a good point. That's one of the things that really, a lot of games do that now, where they have like notes and stuff. And actually, it's after Resident Evil, like every survival horror game basically use that same concept. But I remember the storyline. That's what really pulled you into the first Resident Evil, and even Resident Evil 2, and was, when you would find those memos and notes lying around, they were creepy as hell. Like remember like all the notes down in the lab about like the experiments they were doing and stuff?
Yeah, like the ones where like you kind of see their degradation, those are
like itchy, tasty.
Yeah.
That's a classic.
And the level of detail that they put into it. Like, I remember the remake, for example, you'd pick up in that very first encounter with the zombie, that guy would have a videotape on him.
Yeah.
And if you forgot about that, you'd miss huge plot points on what was going on. If you didn't put it into the the video recorder down in the lab later, like hours later in the game.
Yeah.
Like little stuff like that. Like, I don't know.
And I remember like how awesome like the slideshow was down there, where you it shows like all the experiments they'd been working on. And so of course you see like Neptune, the shark. That was like, oh my God, the shark in the original game was so amazing. Like that was one of my favorite parts of the entire game, is like all of a sudden you go in this flooded out lab, and they had been doing experiments on sharks, and they had a tank that busted, right? Now the remake version was even better.
It was.
The whole tank system they had underground. I mean, that was just amazing. And then they had like the huge like mom Neptune.
Yeah, and the babies that would eat
the baby Neptune. Yeah. I don't wonder why. I take it back. There was a Neptune in Resident Evil Outbreak, like swimming around in think the river or something.
Also, I think Jan was better in the remake as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one cool thing about Resident Evil 6. The one scene that I kind of liked was like where Chris battles that giant snake, and it reminded me of the Jan battle.
Yeah, like maybe that's it too. But there wasn't a lot of like the boss battles were. I don't know. They weren't necessarily like in your face boss battles for Resident Evil 1. They were just obstacles you had to get past.
Yeah.
Whereas they make a big old over the top show about it in RE4 and 5 and 6.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my God. The Zero Beat 6, like the last boss, was ridiculous.
I couldn't force myself to play.
Oh my God. Let me just say this. Resident Evil 6's boss is like this guy, and he like infects himself with the virus or whatever, as always in Resident Evil. We'll talk about that in a minute. But basically turns into, and I should excuse language, but I crap you not, that the blast boss is a giant fly. It just flies around on the rooftops. Yeah, and it's like it's massive, and you fight this thing like 3 or 4 times. Like it's ridiculous. This battle goes on forever, and it's so generic. It just made me so mad.
We could have a whole podcast about stupid freaking bosses.
Yeah, yeah. But it was awful. Let me just say that. But since we started touching on that, one thing that I guess Resident Evil needed to change up, because it was the one problem with the original Resident Evils. I will say this: as much as I love them, they all followed the exact same plot, as far as like, okay, you start off in one area, you explore, then ultimately you end up in a lab, right? And then you have a confrontation with the villain. The villain injects themselves with whatever virus it is, whether it's the TG, X or Y virus. And then they start mutating, and then basically you have a boss battle, and at the same time the lab is about to explode. So there's a countdown.
Like there's like a bazooka involved.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you always have a bazooka. Dakota, please tell me there's a bazooka in Resident Evil 7 at the last boss.
There is something like that.
Is there a countdown too?
It explodes. I'll say that. There's a countdown,
but yeah, every game had like the same you always end up in a lab, and the villain injects themselves with the whatever virus it is this time, whether it's TG, Las Plagas, or
Well, I'll tell you this: Resident Evil 7 has a lab, and you do go off into the sunset in a helicopter. So,
yes. And with the building blowing up in the background,
just like Predator.
But yeah, it always cracked me up how there would always be those like countdowns.
I mean, it put pressure on you. But
it just got formulaic after a while.
It's classic.
I will say, like, even though Resident Evil 4 story wasn't really tied to the main series, I did like the Emperor Palpatine dude in that series. Like, even though he was like so over the top.
Emperor Palpatine.
Sadler. Is it Sadler?
Yeah, Sadler.
Oh yeah, that guy.
Like the main villain guy.
Oh, in Resident Evil 4.
Maybe Sadler's the little midget Napoleon. I don't know, but maybe it's Sadler. I don't know.
Sadler was the guy with the beard, I think. With the robe and the beard.
The one we all thought was a tyrant in the. Yeah, he reminded me of a tyrant from Resident Evil 4.
Oh. Kessler or something like Krauser.
Krauser
was the guy who was backstabbing Wesker.
Yeah. He's the guy with the big knife.
He was the one who was working for Umbrella while working for Wesker the entire time. Yeah. So it was.
I always just refer to him as Resident Evil Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah.
See, that could have been a cool plot line as far as like I did like the aspect of like it made sense that Wesker was there trying to get a sample of this new virus or whatever. Right?
I mean,
And so, the Plagas. And so that, that made sense, but like it just was so left field. Like I don't know.
You know what I hated most is that it was a one gigantic escort mission.
Yeah.
That's
to their credit, it wasn't like as annoying as other escort missions were like in games at the time. Because, I mean, Ashley, I think was her name.
Yeah.
Like Ashley Graham.
Yeah. Like, I don't think she could really die. I think she always just kind of hid out of the way or something.
She could be taken off and then it's mission failure.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I forget.
Or if you accidentally shot her.
That was always a hilarious cutscene, though, when she's like carried off by one of the random minions.
Leon, help!
Yeah.
That's that game.
I always loved I always loved like the death screens on Resident Evil.
The QuickTime animations on I will say the Krauser knife fight that you have is probably one of my best favorite boss battles you have in an entire video game period. That was just
I just didn't like his design. Like his mutation was really cheesy. Like how he his arm turns into like a knife or whatever. Like that was kind of cheeseball.
Yeah, it's kind of
like I didn't like when it like that aspect of it. Like the Plagas themselves were really cool enemies. Like how they would be inside of you like a parasitic host. Like I thought that was neat. Some of the creature design I thought was really weird. Like what I liked about the original Resident Evil BOWs were that they were more based on reality, so they were like mutations of like animals or like people, but like and they had some level of like realism that you could see how that like such and such would mutate into that. But like I said with Krauser, his character is known for carrying a knife around, right? He's always spinning that knife, and then so when he mutates, his arm turns into a knife.
Fidget spinner.
Like what kind of cheesy? Like that was so cheesy. But there were some really great like monster designs in Resident Evil 4, like enemies and stuff. Like the lake monster was like amazing.
Oh yeah. I mean, I also loved like the Iron Maidens and the Regenerators.
Oh, Regenerator was one of the coolest enemies ever.
Those were creepy, like the weird sounds they made.
Yeah, those were like classic Resident Evil like creatures, right? But like, I didn't really like the Iron Maidens and all that because I didn't think they really fit in. Like,
they're a little bit over the top. But I mean,
what was the creature that his like sidekicks? The one he sends into the
this little
to kill you.
Yeah, the assassin, like his guards or whatever.
Those things were kind of Resident Evil-esque, but
nah, they were too alien. I thought like they were like okay, let's take because they were insect-like, but they totally look like alien creatures. Let's take, for example, I have to say we were talking about hunters earlier. One of my favorite enemies was the Chimera. Remember that? They were like
which game was that in?
From Resident Evil 1. That's the only game I know of that they were really in, but they were like down in like that boiler room in Resident Evil, like in the labs. They were like kind of like insect-like.
Oh yeah, okay.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I vaguely remember
But
that.
those things were they were. I take it back. The Chimera I think came back in Resident Evil 3, but like basically that was a cool enemy, and it made sense because those were like creatures that were spliced with like insect and human DNA. But like the creature that is in Resident Evil 4 was also supposed to be some kind of like Plaga's alien, or some not alien, but Plaga's insect hybrid, and it just totally looks like something like out of like if you put that creature in like an alien game, it would have fit in. You know what I mean? Like,
I didn't like Elegante.
yeah. Oh, I hate. That's the worst enemy of all. That was the corniest Resident Evil enemy of all time. Was the giant like Lord of the Rings troll?
It reminded me of Lord of the Rings.
Garbage.
Popular at the time.
Garbage. Like that made me almost as mad as the damn movies. And then they brought it back in Resident Evil 5, and I was like, really?
Yeah.
I didn't like their Pyramid Head ripoff of Resident Evil 5 either.
I don't remember that.
The very beginning of the game when you're in the village and he just busts through the wall on you.
Vaguely.
He has like a big axe.
Oh yeah, that was cheesy.
Kind of reminds me of Pyramid Head.
Yeah, I didn't like that either. I didn't like a lot of the enemies in Resident Evil 5. I wasn't a big fan of what I think they call them a genie. It's like what the enemies are called in Resident Evil 5.
Even though I beat that game, I hardly remember anything about it.
Oh my god! And then in Resident Evil 6, they had the Magini again, right? They're human like creatures, and they kind of had like slight like insect like features, but they basically shot at you with like guns and rocket launchers, and it was ridiculous. It literally Resident Evil 6 is basically Call of Duty. It really is. It's Call of Duty with some monsters.
Resident Evil 6 needs to be wiped off the map. Like it needs to be wrote out.
I actually paid full price for that game. I bought every Resident Evil game, and I always say, "Oh, this is it. They screwed me for the last time. I'm not buying the next game." And then, of course, I do.
Well, luckily, you bought 7.
Yeah. I like it. Like I said, but yeah, that troll monster was. Oh, good lord.
The only thing I think I really remember about Resident Evil 5, other than it being like a good co-op experience, was like how there was like tons of like random Asian people like in Africa.
Yeah. Well, do you remember the reason for that? Was because
it's just political correct.
Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, like before Resident Evil came out, there was, I guess this is kind of at that time where like, before like all the PC stuff really started happening that we're seeing now.
Kind of like the proto social justice warriors.
Yeah, this is exactly. This is what started it all. But originally Resident Evil 5, okay, obviously the setting's in Africa. So the villagers were all black, okay? And they were like, black villagers, which made sense, but some SJWs got offended and contacted Capcom, made a big deal out of it. And like I remember gaming magazines and stuff were talking about, oh, we got a white protagonist, killing blacks in this game. So basically, Capcom bent to the will of the people. And when the game came out, all of a sudden it takes place in Africa, but there's suddenly Asian and white villagers. There's more Asian and white villagers than there are black villagers. So, which is kind of weird. But, so yeah.
So now the protagonist isn't just a racist, he's a psychopath.
I don't know. Maybe Tricell has just moved in a bunch of people from all over the world. But it was kind of weird.
Hey, so before we cut out here, Rob, or give final thoughts, I was looking here, and Resident Evil came out in 96. So I thought, wouldn't it be kind of fun to look at all the different games that came out in 96?
I think it came out in 95.
It came out in 96.
Biohazard came out in 95 in Japan.
In Japan.
Actually release in America.
Okay.
So you had Duke Nukem 3D, which was, in my opinion, one of the greatest. Quake, which was an all-time classic multiplayer game.
Oh, yeah.
Super Mario RPG, Super Mario 64, Diablo for PC.
Yeah.
And I think Civilization 2 also came out. So Resident Evil, I mean, it was completely different than anything that came out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. Like, I mean, everyone was talking about it. Like I said, Dustin was actually he was playing it and I had never heard of it before. And I sat down one time when he was playing it and just got sucked into it, and I just fell in love. So
I mean, zombie games weren't popular. It wasn't a thing.
Well, Resident Evil is single-handedly responsible for not only reviving horror games, but and maybe even creating the subgenre of horror games, but it revived the zombie genre in cinema and all other forms of media.
When
you think about it, like Romero hadn't made a movie in a long time, and Resident Evil was what kind of kicked off all this, for the past couple of decades, what have been, nonstop, zombie movies and books and everything else.
Yeah, zombies are kind of played out now, but I mean, they're kind of a novel thing.
We're on the tail end of that now.
Just punch in zombie movies into Google, and you can see that there's a big gap between the late 80s and 2000.
Yep.
2002, you had 28 Days Later. I mean, that was probably one of the first zombie movies that came out since 86, was it The Return of the Living Dead or something?
I guarantee I'm willing to say this. I guarantee you that if it wasn't for Resident Evil, we probably would never have had the Walking Dead TV series.
Yeah. I think that's true.
I don't think it would have ever happened. Obviously the comics and stuff, but I don't think it would have become as big of a cultural zeitgeist or whatever that it's become.
Yeah. I mean, look how many other franchise Resident Evil's inspired. If you look at survival horror in general, it wasn't really a thing. So every game that's a survival horror game since, you have Silent Hill, you have your Outlast, you have even Alien Isolation owes credit to Resident Evil.
Silent Hill.
I liked Parasite Eve.
Parasite Eve, I was about to say that's another one, because that used the same format almost, except it was RPG.
It was almost identical.
Yeah, there were a lot of knockoffs at the time. And
Gothic.
I have to say, there was this at the time I was so obsessed with Resident Evil, and there was this golden age right around the time that the Dreamcast came out, where there were tons of Resident Evil clones, and none of them were really that good. The only one I can say that is really good was Silent Hill.
What about Dino Crisis?
Dino Crisis is awesome, but I meant as far as other companies, that one was developed by Capcom, so that was kind of a spin-off, I guess. But yeah, Dino Crisis was amazing. I love Dino Crisis too.
Eternal Darkness. The developers were inspired by Resident Evil when making that.
Oh yeah, that game was fantastic. Yeah, there were so many clones, and like I said, the Dreamcast I remember specifically had a ton of launch titles that were Resident Evil knockoffs. And of course, they also got Code Veronica, but they had Carrier, they had The Ring. What was some of the other?
House of the Dead,
of the Dead. There was, what was that other one? I don't know. There was a bunch of Blue Stinger was a Resident Evil kind of knockoff. But then there was what are some other knockoffs? There was what was that one that came out for PS2 and it was
Did I say Martian Gothic? That was
Martian Gothic. Yep. Yeah, that game was kind of cool. I liked Martian Gothic. The Thing. They came out with the Thing game.
That game was good.
Yeah, it was a good game. It's the true sequel to The Thing.
Alan Wake could even be one.
Alan Wake. Yeah, I mean, really anything that...
That's anything. I don't think that it would have been a niche that people would want to pay their money towards unless Resident Evil was so successful. And that's why I say that, for people who sit there and say, oh, well, Resident Evil's just ripping off this or this, I think Resident Evil's earned the right to do whatever they want with their games.
Well, the developer did say that, Resident Evil, the inspiration for Resident Evil was Alone in the... as far as gameplay, was Alone in the Dark. Because it was kind of... Alone in the Dark had kind of a similar, third-person perspective and all that with fixed camera angles.
Yeah, there was another kind of a PC game around the era. I think it was called 13th Guest or something like that. That was it along with Alone in the Dark were kind of the prototype horror games.
And then of course Romero was a big inspiration, but there was also a game. Resident Evil started off as a remake of a different game, Sweet Home, I think is what it was called, and it was an NES game.
I don't think I've heard of that one.
I think it was like only released in Japan.
Okay.
But it's like it was an RPG, and it was very similar to Resident Evil as far as like setting and stuff. And there were like monsters and zombies you would fight and stuff.
Yeah, there were a couple there were some kind of creepy games on the NES, or at least they seemed kind of creepy when we were kids, like Shadowgate. I don't know if you ever seen that one. It was like kind of a weird like first person RPG kind of game on the Nintendo. Like Monster Party was.
Yeah, Monster Party.
I mean, it wasn't scary, but I mean there was a lot of
Monster in My Pocket.
Yeah, Monster in My Pocket. Yeah.
I mean, it didn't seem like there was a lot of. I don't know. It just wasn't mainstream.
Yeah.
And now you have games like Amnesia, and you have games like Five Nights at Freddy's. All these games I don't think would be here.
Yeah.
Without Resident Evil.
Yep.
So, I mean, another thing to get onto is Resident Evil 4 directly impacted how a lot of games were going to be played. Gears of War is a pretty much clone of gameplay from Resident Evil 4.
Yeah. I liked the style of like the gameplay style of the Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6 as far as like the over the shoulder like gameplay style. Like they fixed the tank control problem, but they didn't fix the storyline problem. Like the games became more and more action oriented. Now, if you had taken, say, Resident Evil 4 or 5, right, that style of gameplay, but change the setting to like a dark, spooky mansion with zombies and hunters and stuff, it would have been cool.
It's just the thing is they strayed too far away from what made them popular.
But at what point, Rob, does that become, oh God, they're making another game inside of a mansion?
Well, I felt like they could have ended. Look, I agree with you. It probably, and like I said earlier, it probably would have at some point gotten old with all the lab and the countdown and all that. But I feel like there was like loose ends, like plot points that were never really ended properly, and it just kind of like I expected from Resident Evil 3 for the STARS members to go on and defeat, Umbrella once and for all, right? But instead, in Resident Evil 4, basically Umbrella just suddenly doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, they just kind of writed all the story.
Yeah, they just kind of, Umbrella Corp dissolved under its, under pressure from the public. Oh, that was it? That's what happened. That was the, climax to this awesome storyline.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what has always bothered me, I guess. Like if they had at least maybe produced a couple more games and had some ultimate showdown where Umbrella's defeated, then that would have been cool. And then they could have went from there on to do whatever they wanted. But I just feel like, I guess for me, there's just loose ends and plot holes and things that just were never explained, or things that just never, it didn't end the way I would have wanted it to, I guess,
Yeah.
Before we go though, one last thing I wanted to talk about was, back on the subject of, early, we kind of touched on prototype versions of Resident Evil games. So obviously there's Resident Evil 1.5, which was the original version of Resident Evil 2. There's been early prototype versions of just about every game, including, obviously the most famous one is probably 1.5 and then 3.5 and, whatever, all those versions of Resident Evil. I was reading the other day, actually, interestingly, article that was years old, and I had never read it before, but it was about the early version of Resident Evil 5 and how Resident Evil 5 was originally supposed to have more like traditional zombie enemies and stuff. Which would have been cool.
Yeah.
But it basically was kind of the same plot. Like, I mean, it was similar. It took place in Africa and whatnot, but there were like more traditional enemies, and there were hunters and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, oh, that would have been cool. It's too bad that they didn't go that route. But actually, the last thing I want to touch on was something that for some reason no one else really remembers. And there's very few references to it. And if you were to go online right now and look it up, you have to dig deep to even find any kind of mention of it, because most people have forgot about it. But there was going to be a Resident Evil sequel before Resident Evil 2 and before even Resident Evil 1.5, and it was called Resident Evil Dash, right?
Oh, I remember that.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It was like only vaguely mentioned in like a magazine, and like over the years have tried to find references or screenshots to it, and I think I've only found like somewhere I once found like one drawing that showed like the mansion or something. But basically, originally when Resident Evil 1 came out, it was a success. So they started to develop a sequel. And instead of developing a full sequel, they were starting to work on like, this is like, we're talking the very early stages of Resident Evil 2. They started to develop like a game that basically would go back to the mansion like years later or something. And so basically it kind of used like the same locations and everything, but basically I just remember them describing it as the mansion from the game, but it had like cobwebs now and stuff basically.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was like, because time had passed and basically the mansion had kind of fell in disrepair.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, and this is assuming then that the plot, the alternate ending where the mansion blows up didn't happen. But so basically, like all I know is that like there was I found a reference somewhere where evidently the game would have started off with someone finding like a mutant plant in the woods outside of like, where near the mansion is. And so people go to investigate like what this mutant plant is. And they end up finding the mansion and basically go in, and it's been years since the Umbrella incident. And that's all I really know about it, because it never really developed much further than, a couple of screenshots and some ideas, I think.
Yeah, that sounds intriguing.
Yeah, it was called Resident Evil Dash, and like there's hardly any reference to it. I'll have to look it up later and send you guys links to it. But
I'm kind of mad we never covered the books either.
Oh yeah, the books are really good.
Like the Resident Evil Umbrella Conspiracy by S.D. Perry.
Yeah, S.D. Perry wrote a series of novels that were really good, and there were even a couple of books that were original. Like most of the books were written as adaptations of the games, but they were really good and they were really well written and go into a lot more depth than the game did.
I mean, these were pre-remake, so like Lisa Trevor wasn't actually in it.
Yeah,
kind of bad.
But I remember what was cool though was like actually what was great about the books was how I talked about how I kind of wanted the STARS members to go off and fight Umbrella. The books actually kind of delved into that. Like there were a couple of original novels. Sorry.
Yeah. The funny thing is, in school I hated to read, but I read almost all of those except the one that you're talking about. Like I got all the way to where it would be like the let me look. I don't remember exactly. It was past Resident Evil 3-ish.
Yeah. Well, there were two books in the series that I remember that weren't based on the games, and they were original. And basically, they involved like Rebecca Chambers and Barry Burton, and the other STARS members going to like various labs around the world and fighting Umbrella, and it was really cool.
That's awesome.
One of the book I can remember was called like Taliban Cove, I think, or something. Or
Taliban?
Yeah, it's something like no, I'm sorry, Caliban, not Taliban.
Okay.
Yeah. I got Taliban on the mind. No, Caliban, and it basically was like some other research lab that Umbrella had, and they were like, the STARS members basically infiltrated this lab and fought, some crazy director there. But it was really cool. It's too bad that never, that's kind of where I wanted the series to go.
Jesus,
more Barry Burton.
Yeah.
Holy! I just looked up those books on Amazon to get a paperback. It's $4.
I know they're expensive. I used to have them all. I don't know what happened to them, but they were cool.
I assume you can't. They're not published anymore if they're that price.
No. Yeah, they're really hard to get. That was a good spinoff, and it's sad that got I think the last book that author wrote was novelization of Code Veronica, and then there were no more after that.
Here's an unrelated fun fact: if you go on Amazon and look up the novelization for BioShock, it's called BioShock Rapture, and look at like the like I think it's like the second or third page. It's like where the author gives thanks. And you'll see, you might see a familiar name reference there.
Oh yeah.
I was kind of like a lore expert that helped him. Like
that's pretty cool.
Yep.
See, Bond, you need to do a podcast on BioShock.
Yeah.
Basically, Bioshock to Bond is what Resident Evil is to me.
Yeah, but Bioshock also, you could also argue that Bioshock wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Resident Evil either, because the first Bioshock was more of a survival horror than it was a shooter, in my opinion. It was creepy.
Yeah, I mean they were going in that direction. It wasn't nearly as I thought it was like a pretty easy game, so it didn't have like that like the challenge aspects of Resident Evil.
Yeah.
But, I
mean,
that,
it had a little bit of the atmosphere.
Yeah, definitely.
Never played it.
I never beat it. I tried to play it a couple times, and it was okay. I just wasn't really sucked into it as much as like. And I know people reference that as like one of the best games ever made, but
I think you'd like it if you played up to like the halfway point and see like the big kind of twist.
Yeah.
Would you kindly go play it again, Robert?
Yeah. Would you kindly?
But I think that's
what you did there.
I think that's a good spot to go ahead and end this, guys. Yeah. I'm sure there's I could talk all night about Resident Evil.
Yeah.
But are there any last comments that you guys would like to make, Lebo?
It's kind of like what we said earlier, that those who like the game hate the movie.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way anything is. If you really like the book and the book's different than the movie, you're going to hate the movie.
Yeah.
I take everything separately. I go, oh, the book's this and the movie's this. It's just they took characters from the book and went, boom, I'll put them in a movie.
Yeah.
It's its own different universe.
I guess.
When the book makes sense with the movie, then it's great. But if it doesn't and the movie's still good, I still go, hey, good job.
Well,
I mean, because if you go backwards, if you go, hey, I love that movie, I wish they made a game of that. Yeah. And then they make the game and you're like, well, that was a shit game. It didn't have nothing to do with the movie.
Yeah.
That's every game based off a movie.
I'll just say
this. If the game's good, you're like, hey, that wasn't that bad.
Yeah. I just, they could have done so much better. They could have still, I feel like the problem with the Resident Evil movie is that it's so much different than the game.
It butchers source material.
For example, I love the Jurassic Park book. I've read that book a million times, and it's just fantastic. Now, it's very similar to the movie, but there's a lot of stuff that was left out. So, but I think the movie is one of the greatest movies of all time. So it can be done as far as making an adaptation that's good, that's somewhat different. But with Resident Evil, they totally just took what was a great horror story and would have made a great horror film and made it into basically the Matrix with zombies. And so I was just like,
I mean, you can take source material and make something completely new out of it. Look at the Witcher games. That's based off Polish books. And it has nothing to do with the books, but it's great in its own right because it makes sense to the universe.
Yeah.
But whereas the movie for Resident Evil just makes absolutely zero sense. Yeah, exactly. It butchers source material instead of enhancing source
material. It basically
material.
just threw in elements that you recognized from the games to try to get you to buy tickets. Chris Redfield's going to be in this one. Oh, and the next movie's gone.
I swear they were literally putting ideas on sticky notes and throwing darts at them.
Hey,
those movies.
The director was like, "Hey, you see that enemy in Resident Evil 5? Let's just randomly throw that enemy into this movie."
Yeah, let's throw that Resident Evil 5 enemy into a shower scene for no reason.
I don't know. Anyway, I hate that movie.
Yeah,
all those movies.
But if you didn't even know anything about the games, which I clearly know way less than you guys do, you're talking about putting video cartridges in something 8 hours later. I'm like, what video card? I never even saw the damn. So I have, and I look at it, I'm like, hey, that wasn't that bad of a movie. I'm not a huge fan by any means. I mean, I think I own the first two movies, but it's not me. That was back when I just bought movies because it was something to do.
Yeah.
But I look at it separately.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, I probably would have been in the same boat if Rob and Dustin weren't my older brothers. So they're the reasons I got into this. I used to watch Robert play all these survival horror games, which is what got me into the genre.
Yep.
So.
And same with me. I was watching, Bond play these games. So.
So my closing thoughts. Give us more Barry Burton, Capcom.
Yeah.
And I'll give
Barry, where are you?
Yeah, Barry.
You should definitely look into that Resident Evil Revelations 2. I think it's on PC, Bond.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it is. And it's actually only it's really cheap. It's not even a full price
Yeah.
game. It's
and play Revelations 1 also. Evidently that one's pretty good too. It's different, but you know,
the stories connect though.
Yeah.
Okay.
As my closing argument is, I'm just glad as the only one that did play 7 that they're going back to survival horror.
Yeah.
And they're bringing the story back. You just go out and play that game.
Yeah.
That game is reminiscent. It's as close as you can get to a Resident Evil game.
Yeah.
Without it being tanky controls. I mean, the story's there, whether Robert got to it or not, but it's there. So it's a resurgence, and I'm just glad that they're heading that direction. Hopefully the movies follow suit.
Yeah. Well, my final thought is this. Capcom, I want you to go back to wipe the slate clean of all these new games that you've come out with. Go back to, let's pretend that Code Veronica was the last entry in this franchise, and let's continue on from there. I want to, that's for me where Resident Evil died. All these new games, including Resident Evil 7, I mean, they might have the title Resident Evil, but to me, they're not Resident Evil games.
Go beat Resident Evil 7 before you make that claim.
You could have, call them a different series and put different characters in it, and it would have been a great offshoot, like, horror series or whatever. But it's not Resident Evil. Lastly, I just want to say that I hope these filmmakers that are developing a new, and I'm really afraid because once again, Constantine Film, who owns the right to Resident Evil, they're responsible for those abortion of franchise that came out over the past decade. And then now they're rebooting the franchise. I think it'd be better off in someone else's hands because they obviously have no clue what they're doing. But, I hope that, with having James Wan on board, that, it's a sign that maybe they're going to go a different direction and more of a horror direction as opposed to an action film direction. And we'll finally get the on-screen representation of Resident Evil that we deserve.
And speaking of, I want its sister game, Silent Hill, to also get a better film adaptation as well.
I thought the movie was pretty good for a video game adaptation, but that's it, guys.
Yeah.
We'll go and end it there. Thanks for tuning in to Geeksation Live. I'm not sure what we're going to be talking about next week, but hopefully, it'll be something as interesting as this was. And I want to congratulate, what's the guy's name? I totally forgot. German Lopez. There we go. German Lopez. He won our first giveaway. So German, that hat's going to be on the way. And of course, if you guys are listening, please subscribe because, we're going to have more podcasts in the future, more reviews. We have a new series coming up. Dustin's actually doing a spinoff series that's going to be up in the next week or so. Lebo's working on a spinoff series. Dakota may be working on a spinoff series in the future. So we got a lot of stuff coming, a lot of content coming.
Hey, maybe they can even leave a podcast ideas in the comments down there.
That's a good idea. Yeah. And if there's anything you would like to hear us talk about, definitely let us know in the comments section. We're always looking for ideas. We kind of have a list of stuff that we look through every week and add to. So we're always looking for new ideas. But like I said, go ahead and subscribe. We're also got a lot of cool giveaways coming in the future. And the only way to be a part of that is if you subscribe. You'll automatically be entered to win those prizes. So until next time, guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you then.